There is a type of leader who never raises their voice, never loses composure, and yet everyone in the room listens. Not because they demand it, because something about them makes silence feel like the right response. You've met someone like that, or you've wished you were someone like that. This video will show you exactly what's happening inside the mind of that person, why most leaders get it completely wrong, and here's the part that will change how you see yourself too. Why the quality you've been told to suppress your whole life might be the very thing standing between you and the leader you're capable of becoming. Most people think leadership is about strength, and they are right, but they have no idea what strength actually looks like in a human being under pressure. The image burned into our culture is loud, decisive in a dramatic way, commanding in a way that fills a room with noise, but walk into any organization that's quietly thriving. Any team that consistently delivers without burning out, any family that actually talks to each other. And you'll find a different kind of energy at the center, still, focused, and bothered in a way that isn't cold, but somehow warmer than anything that shouts. That stillness has a name, and it isn't a weakness. It has the name of the psychology calls of fear, but calm leadership begins with a problem most people never even diagnose. They confuse composure with passivity. They confuse firmness with aggression. And because they can't hold both qualities in the same hand, they swing between them. Too soft one day, too hard next day, and the people around them never know which version is walking through the door. That unpredictability is not a personality quirk. It is the single greatest threat to trust in a new relationship, professional or personal. And trust, not authority, is the actual currency of leadership. So here's what psychologists have found about the leaders who seem to carry both qualities, firmness and calm without contradiction. Their nervous system is doing something different, not because they were born special, but because at some point in their lives, consciously or not, they learn to regulate their internal state before responding to the external one. This is the concept researchers call emotional regulation, and it is, without exaggeration, the invisible architecture beneath every great leadership decision ever made. You don't lead the room until you've learned to lead what's happening inside you. And this is where it gets interesting, because the path to that kind of self-leadership is not what you've been told. It has to do with another thing. Think about the last time you were tested, a conversation that went sideways, a decision with no clean answer, a moment when someone challenged you publicly and every instinct you had was screaming at you to defend yourself, to push back, to prove something. What did you do? And more importantly, what did the version of you that you want to be do in that same moment? There is a gap between those two answers, and inside that gap lives the entire subject of this video. The emotion at the center of this conversation is fear. Not the fear of heights or darkness, the quiet, socially acceptable, professionally camouflaged fear of not being enough. Fear of being seen as weak if you stay calm. Fear of losing control if you don't react. Fear that if you don't dominate the moment will dominate you. This fear is the engine behind every leader who micromanages, behind every manager who raises their voice in meetings, behind every executive who mistakes urgency for importance. They aren't being strong, they are being afraid and performing strength as a way to manage that fear. The problem is that the people around them feel it. They always feel it. Firm but calm leadership dismantles that performance, not by removing the fear. Fear is human and it stays with you, but by refusing to let it drive. The psychological mechanism here is what researchers call the window of tolerance, a zone of arousal in which a person can function, think, and respond rather than react. Leaders who operate inside that window aren't unaffected by stress. They are affected and they remain capable. That distinction is everything. It's the difference between a surgeon who has seen blood before and one who hasn't. Same cut, completely different response. Now, here's the piece most leadership books skip entirely. Firmness is not about what you say. It's about what you don't say and why. A firm leader can hear something they disagree with and not immediately correct it, can sit with tension without rushing to resolve it on their own terms, can deliver a hard decision and leave the room without needing the other person to agree with them. That capacity to hold a position without needing external validation is what separates leadership from people pleasing wearing a title. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most people who call themselves leaders are deeply committed to being liked. They've just learned to disguise it as conscious building. And the calm side of this equation is equally misunderstood. Calm is not distance. It is not the absence of emotions. Some of the most emotionally present people in any room are also the most composed. What they have is not less feeling. They have more processing. They've done the interior work in real time or beforehand that allows them to feel the weight of a moment without being flattened by it. This is what makes calm leadership feel safe to the people around it. You're not following someone who doesn't care. You're following someone who cares so much that they refuse to let their emotions become your problem. There's a question you need to sit with here, and it's going to feel personal because it is. Think of someone whose leadership you genuinely respected, not admired from a distance, but actually felt in your life. What was it about them that made you trust them? Not their title, not their resume. Something about the way they occupied a moment. Something about how they made you feel when the things were hard. That quality you're reaching for right now. That's what this entire conversation is about, and you're about to understand exactly how it works. Here's the architecture, laid out simply. Firm but calm leadership rests on three inferior practices. The first is self-awareness under pressure, the ability to notice what you're feeling before you act on it. Not to judge the feeling, not to suppress it, but to see it clearly enough that it becomes information rather than instruction. The second is values-anchored decision-making, having a set of principles so internalized that when external pressure arrives, you don't have to think about what to do. You already know. Not because you rehearse the scenario, but because you know who you are. The third is what psychologists call non-reactive presence. The ability to stay fully engaged with a difficult person or situation without your state of mind being determined by theirs. That third practice is where most people struggle because it asks something that feels counterintuitive. It asks you to remain open while remaining grounded, to be moved without being swept away, to listen to someone who is frustrated or afraid or angry and respond to the person underneath the behavior rather than the behavior itself. This is not a soft skill. It is, in fact, one of the most cognitively and emotionally demanding things a human being can do in a professional context. And the leaders who do it consistently don't just manage teams, they transform them. Now, consider what this looks like in practice. A leader practicing firm calm doesn't interrupt when someone challenges them in a meeting. They listen completely, then respond slowly with clarity and without defensiveness. A leader practicing firm calm doesn't escalate when a project fails. They name what happened, hold people accountable without humiliation, and redirect energy toward what comes next. A leader practicing firm calm doesn't need to announce authority because authority isn't something they perform. It's something other people experience in their presence. And here's what that doesn't to an organization over time. It creates psychological safety. It creates cultures where people bring problems before they become a crisis. It creates the conditions where honest work is possible. That is the compounding return on interior leadership. And that is what you have to think. And now we return to where we began. That person in the room who never raises their voice, who holds the tension without breaking it, who makes silence feel like the right response. You wonder what was happening inside their mind. Now you know. They have learned, not perfectly, not permanently, but consistently, to lead themselves first. They have traded the performance of strength for the practice of it. They have made peace with the fear that lives inside every leader who has ever had to make a decision that mattered. They didn't remove that fear. They stopped letting it write the script. That is the psychology of firm but calm leadership. Not a personality type, not a gift, a practice. And the only question that remains, the one this entire video was building toward, is whether you're ready to stop performing the leader you think people need and start becoming the one you actually are.